Yay Networks.
So you wrote a pilot,
Yeah,
okay.
I feel like that was one of the first things I wrote when I
Was
was trying
that
to
the first pilot you ever written?
No.
Okay.
I wrote about him, trying to keep him alive almost on the page, and it was this is awful. A couple months later, I just felt this new voice where I was feeling myself become bitter.
I'm so excited you're here. It's so
Me
good
too.
to see
It's
you.
been so long.
It's been so long. Isn't that crazy how time flies?
I know, and I feel like since that we're just never gonna get those years back, but it does add this distance to everything, this time distance.
Totally. Wait, so the last time I saw you, I think we went to have some Mexican food?
Yep. Yes, there was Mexican food. Gracias, madre.
Yes?
Yep.
Oh my God, yes. And I haven't been back since, by the way.
Yes, me neither. And I'm is that still open? Because
It is.
It is. Okay,
It is.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's a really popular restaurant for the listeners in LA. It's a bougie Mexican food. I usually like really dirty Mexican food, but if you're trying to be a little more clean and healthy,
yeah,
you had to go to Gracias Madre.
Very vegan. Yes.
Very vegan. And it's good.
Yeah.
So
how you been?
I'm so good. I can't wait to dive in. I've been really good. I've been really good. See, I probably just leaned too forward. But I want to catch up with you. Where I see you're traveling.
Yeah, I ended up spending half the time in Massachusetts, where I'm from. My mom is there, and I just also after a few months here, I'm I need to go away. I don't know what LA to me can be very draining, but then so can home. So yeah,
no, it's nice to have a balance of both worlds. I'm dying to get back to New York. I'm dying. If someone said, "Hey, let's go to," I would hop on a plane and just be like, "Kids, I got to go."
When's the last time you were in New York?
Probably right before the pandemic, actually.
Oh, okay, so that is a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
See,
gosh.
the pandemic took years. I didn't realize that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been back home. Okay, so I want to talk to you about you, obviously, because that's where you and I met.
Yes.
And I fell in love with you, and I felt like we just had this instant connection and vibe. And you're so damn talented in what you do. And I'm sure people have so many questions on how you're just so cheerful and happy. And then you read you or watch and you're like, she wrote this?
Yeah. Isn't that, I guess my mom is the one who's always she can, yes, she did. Yeah, I can be a little,
As an artist though, I can I can understand, because I could also go very dark. I've obviously played some very...
You can do that, yes.
I've played some very dark characters.
They're sweet and smiley, and then we can have all kinds of other things going on inside of us, yes.
So that brings me to a couple weeks ago, I did rage journaling. And that is really interesting.
Yeah, how does that work?
I mean, I imagine it's what you do, but you get paid to do it. But you just literally jot down, or you rate, instead of I am so grateful, I'm so happy, I'm so blessed, I do my IMs. You literally just take something, you just start journaling, and it can turn into it, just if someone's hurt you, or you have trauma, or you're upset about a situation, you literally just I call it diarrhea of the mouth, and you're just bleh on the paper. And then most of the time you're like, wow, I sound crazy.
Yep.
If someone were, and by the way, you're writing so fast, and you're getting it all out there where you almost can't even read the writing, right? But it's taking the noise from
That's
here.
That's when you're really getting somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't know where you're going, and I love that. And you're on one thing 1 second and another the next. And
yes, and then you can kind of, if you can reflect upon that journal entry, you could really understand certain things tied together that you would never realize. And that's a beautiful thing, and that's what's so therapeutic about journaling, I guess.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I feel that's where a lot of my writing came from too. When I would start journaling and then let it go. Sometimes when people talk about writer's block, I'm you have to just get the stuff out of your head, and then it turns into fiction. Suddenly you realize you're telling there are stories in you, and by telling your stories, that other part of your brain starts making up a new story. And I love that feeling when I realize, at some point, it was me, and I'm mad at this, and why is this way? And then suddenly I'm so she walked in and blah, blah, blah. And I kind of just go with it. Yeah.
So when did you...
I like that there's a name for that. Sorry, the rage journaling.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually want to create, now I'm thinking about it, I want to create a product that is a specific rage journal.
There should be, yes. It's the same way now you can go places and like smash stuff.
Oh,
Like,
arrange
I
room.
believe,
Yes.
like, yep,
I did
like-
that with the girls.
Yes. Oh, you did that?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah.
It was so fun.
Yes.
A little expensive for my taste. I was like, oh my God, I could have just gone to a garage sale and like plopped everything in the back. But it was great. The girls literally blasted Taylor Swift.
Yep.
And they're like, we're not. This was like, I think London was going through her first like breakup.
Oh boy.
And so I took her there and I was like, oh, I think mommy needs to come here when the kids are at school.
Yes. Was it glass or like machine, like things that break easily or?
So you can pay for different rooms.
Oh my God.
I paid for like a bucket of, or a crate of just cups, plates, and like that kind of stuff. And then you set it on a barrel. But I think it would be more interesting to like beat up a car.
Yeah. Because I asked because did you ever see the show The Client List?
No.
It was on Lifetime, and I loved it. It was Jennifer Love Hewitt, but at one point, her boss takes her out back where there are all these washing machines, and she just kind of goes in them with the crowbar. And I was like, oh yeah, like when something's hard to break and you really have to like put your back into it. Like I feel like then there's smashing something like a cup that breaks easily. There's all different kinds of. You know.
I remember this brought me to a memory just now when I went to a rehab type place, and I do that because it was like I wasn't detoxing from anything. I was detoxing from my marriage. And they made me, one of the therapies was more of like a rage where basically you had to take a baseball bat to a boxing, what do you call those things? That you hang from a weighted bag. That's what it's called.
That sounds like a proper name, yes.
It was a weighted bag. And it was so therapeutic. And what came out, I was like, I'm not going to, and then it just bawling. And it wasn't just me. It was everybody. So I was like, okay, so this different type of therapy it's an alternative to, I think being grateful and stuff is really good, but I'm just really, this is like.
Yeah, I think you need both. I feel like everything in life is balance. And there's been kind of an excess of this practicing gratitude and like where you put all this pressure on yourself to be thankful and grateful. And it's like, it's good, but then there needs to be times where you're just
and that is why
out.
my therapist was like, you should rage journal. And I'm like, did you just tell me? Like, that sounds illegal. And by the way, we got to burn that shit after I write it down because I think the police might be showing up at my door.
Yes. That's where it's good when you can't read your own handwriting sometimes. Right. Like, I have the worst handwriting.
Yes,
and
so do I.
Yeah, like, and I feel like there's an instinct in me that's like, this is a good thing. Like, that it's out of my control. And the more I try to make it clear, the stranger it looks like. It just looks like a serial killer,
It's true, or a doctor. I always said, I'm like, maybe I should be a doctor. So I want to go back to when you were little because I find like there's so much. You have so much talent.
Oh, thank you.
And your storytelling, because I've obviously read your other work just besides the novels. And as an actor, I always aspire to, get my thoughts because regardless, we're all deeply feeling creatures and artists. You express it through writing. I express it through verbal and body language, right, in front of the camera. And I find it so beautiful. So tell me, when you were younger, take me through your journey of becoming a writer. And is that what you wanted to become at an early age?
I mean, I wanted to be a dancer, an actor. Like, I loved all of that.
Okay.
And yes, like that was and then like literally like when people came over the house, I would like put my leotard on, assuming that they wanted to see me dance. Do you know what I mean? Like and just get up on this like barrel and perform for everyone. And then over time, like in school, we started writing stories and I just really loved that.
Ooh.
Yes. And I had this great teacher, like I think it was first grade, and she just would give us like a subject and we'd have a few minutes and I loved doing that. And I realized like, oh, I like making stuff up. I like to play. Yeah. And I was a bossy child. And I feel like that's where the writing comes from too, where like, I like, when you get to know yourself, like when you're playing with a friend and you're little, I'd be like, no, you're doing this. I'm this person. Like I was that child.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay. So I do have this thing in me that's kind of controlling. And that's where like, as I grew away from like acting and all that, I realized so much of that for me, you have to give up control and put yourself out there in this way that like either feels really like cathartic and good for you, to a good way to express yourself. Or for me, it was just like, no, I want to sit and like let it all out in secret.
Yeah, you want to control your story. You want to control the
Mm-hmm.
story that you were portraying. And that's a lot of self-awareness at that age.
Yeah, storytelling to me was just a great way to control. And I choreographed a dance routine, and that was a good experience too because it was like, yeah, you can't control other people. Like,
Yeah, you're like, you're
some
not
people
hitting
are good
your-
at it. Yeah, yes. Like,
So now this brings us to say like high school. In high school, you're just continuing to write? Have you written a book yet?
I feel like, yeah, I wrote like, I started writing short stories and in high school, and then I sent one to Sassy magazine, which was like, I just worshipped Sassy, and I got an honorable mention, and it was like, they sent me a typewriter, and I got my name in the magazine, and it was the greatest experience, but the story was like very dark, and it was called Angels and Angels, and it was from the perspective of a girl who was dead from an angel dust overdose, and I mean, I was like 13. So when I say that I don't know what angel dust is, like I liked the song She Talks to Angels by the Black Crowes, and I liked the phrase angel dust. But in school, they like send me down the hall to the guidance counselor. I'm like, this is fiction. Like, I made this up. I don't even know how you do angel dust. Like, you know.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, and it was in my first experience of that. Oh, like, there's this thing of like, why is this what comes out of you? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, and I think in all art, it's like that's kind of where you keep going because you don't know why. And I liked that process of like, oh, I seem like someone who would write like I loved 90210. And I would try to write things like that, and it just like couldn't, you know? Like I just was like, no, when I sit down and make stuff up, someone's gonna die or be in pain.
Right.
And yeah.
See, that's what I'm drawn to. See, and I think that's why you and I have this connection.
Yeah.
Because we really like
Yes.
we like dark shit, and it's weird. It's like it's not weird, and I love what you just said. Is that's why we keep doing. We're the curiosity stays alive.
Yes.
And I think that's when you get a writer's block, I imagine, or like when you fall out of love with acting. I had to take a year off because I just didn't love it because I wasn't curious about the human condition.
Yes.
Curious about why people get motivated to do the things they say and do, and why you talk more or talk less. And so I think just being curious is
yes. And I love that you said that about a year off because I believe in that so much too, that like that we live in such a pressure cooker culture that like, what did you do today? What are you going to get done today? How many words or what did you do to, and I'm like, no, it's like natural to have breaks and to have periods where you're like, I'm not into this, I'm not feeling it, and it's okay, and not to think of it as a block, but like a space.
Yeah, because you never know where you're going to find your inspiration.
Yes.
Like I could be sitting outside and having a phone conversation, and then a blue jay flies by, and I only say that because I literally have a blue jay that comes and visits me every day, and it just sparks an idea.
Yes.
Right?
And being patient with yourself too, and saying, okay, like I don't have that like fire in me right now, and that's okay because like that's the curiosity of like what's going to bring it back.
And essentially it's okay to not have the answers right now.
Yeah, and like to me it's always like just getting to better and newer questions. Like like answers, schmanswers. Like I don't know anything. Like that's the other thing with like advice culture. I'm like I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but when I do know, I'll let you know.
Yes, yeah. When I know something, I feel like but I don't know everything all the time, and I don't have things figured out. And I think that there's a lot of like pressure to like seem like you do or something. I'm like, no one does, and that's what makes us humans. Like
and that's what makes
we can feel that way sometimes, but that's a feeling, like any feeling, that it also comes and goes.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes you a beautiful artist and writer is that it's okay not to know, and just having the freedom of not knowing is so powerful.
Yes.
And that is anything you do in life. And that's what, with London, my oldest, and her not knowing what she wants to do in life. And I just had a meeting at school, and they were asking her about plans after college, and she says these beautiful things, and I just watching her evolve and not like shoving something down, for these kids, because I think they say like 70% of kids want to be like TikTok or YouTubers, which is
it's wild, yeah,
insane. But that's what they're exposed to. But if you take breaks and you go and you explore other things, it's like just being open is so important, and not being closed off mentally. So
yeah, I think that's also what, I don't know about you with acting, but what appealed to me about writing was like I would get all into something and want to be like a neuroscientist, and then realize I'm not going to be a neuroscientist. And then I'd be like, I want to go like be I don't know, like work at a motorcycle gang bar, like just so many different things. I'm like, when you write, you can go to all these places, and it's kind of avoiding the decision of what you're going to do with your life by getting to lead all these other lives.
I thought I was going to be a doctor. I swear to God, I was in New York. I was on All My Children, and the storylines go like long periods of time, and then you may have 2 weeks off. And so I enrolled myself into Fordham University, and I was taking some biology because I love science, and I was like, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. And so I was like, got really geeky. I shadowed a doctor for a couple months.
Oh, wow.
And then I realized, no fucking way. You're not going to be a doctor. Like, there's just like, if I wanted to, yes, but that experience that I had,
yep,
I brought it to my art.
Absolutely.
And that's why.
Yes. And that's part of that curiosity. It's like, oh, if the curiosity always comes back to the art, then you're an artist. Yeah.
Yeah, I am.
And you look at those because I remember thinking I would go to med school and like looking at even like reading about calculus. I'm like, I can't, like, I'd have to take all of these classes. Like, why can't you just become a doctor?
Right.
Like, going into the room, like, I could deliver the bad news really well. I could be compassionate,
I could deliver a baby. Yeah, why not? Sure. Just push.
It's the way you get when you watch a lot of Law and Order and you're like, yeah, I'm a lawyer now. Like, because that was my other thing that like appealed to me.
Yeah.
But again, it was that thing of, oh, these tests, statistics, I can't even say that word.
Yeah. It's tough. So how did the idea of Joe Goldberg come into that beautiful brain of yours?
I feel like it's always a few different things coming together, like the swirl where I had gone through, like on a personal level, I'd gone through like the first major loss of my life where my father passed away, but very slowly over 2 years. And it was like, on the one hand, you have to keep telling yourself that you're fortunate to know that you get to say goodbye to someone and spend this time with them. On the other hand, watching someone slowly, deteriorate and know that they're facing that is like, someone you love going through that is like just terrible. So I feel like over 2 years, like my brain was just like, yes, the emotions were all over the place, the intensity, I remember sometimes it just not being able to sleep at night because of like, this is it, like, this is really it. Like, the whole point of life is like, you don't know what happens next. And when you know what happens next, it's awful. And for someone who likes to be in control in that way, it was like, oh, I have so much control. I have no control. And I feel like I was constantly flipping back and forth of like being really grateful, like all just this emotional.
Yes. Roller coaster for sure.
Yes. And then after he passed away, it was like this, just a horror that like, almost, I feel like I was naive enough to think that there would be some kind of relief, even though I feel like that there won't be, but you can't, it's like the way the human spirit is, you can't not think that you'll feel like, oh, they're at peace. And it's like, no, this is just a whole new kind of terrible. So it was like a lot of darkness. And I did write a pilot like that. It was like about my experience. And it was like, this is terrible. And it was like, this is just, I can't write about what happened yesterday. And it felt very like clinical and like not me. And then
so you wrote a pilot, like
yeah,
okay,
yeah. I feel like that was one of the first things I wrote when I was trying to like.
Was that the first pilot you ever written?
No.
Okay,
but I don't. It was like, oh, I think I'll just write, directly. Like I wrote about him, like trying to keep him alive almost on the page, and it was like, this is awful, like an awful experience, a pretty awful script. And then a couple months later, I just felt this like new voice where I was feeling myself become bitter. And I didn't like the way it felt. And I missed that like energy of my dad, who was a very like bright, buoyant, and it's like, I hated like trying to keep him alive in my head and listen to voicemails. And I did feel this, like, I can't I'm never going to get over this. And then Joe came out of that, like one day in a coffee shop, just like feeling this like anger. And I would have like these bouts of like, almost like panic attacks, but not where I would go to a hospital or something, but where the emotions were too much. And then I feel like he was just born out of that, of like, I cannot become bitter. Like of all the things to be, I have to do something to keep myself smiling and lift myself up. And this sick guy and this voice, something about it was like very hypnotizing for me. And it was like the first thing that really made the hours pass, that like where I'd sit there and write and look up and be like, oh, I can still do this. Like it felt so, I felt like he saved my life. And in that way, I was like, my friends were, I would say, describe him one day as like, oh, this man who loves books. And like, he's like my dad, like he loves books and music and movies and passionate. And then the next day I'm like, oh my God, I just wrote a really good like sick scene where he kills someone. They're like, wait, which? And I'm like, to me, it was like trying to piece together like how awful it is to love someone who dies. Right. And like that love and death thing. And then with Beck in the first book, it was like, that was like my young self. And I did feel like there were two parts of me, like, and like that they're both bad. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That neither is necessarily not bad, but like, yeah. So I feel like Joe was the darkness and Beck was the light. And when you just kind of feel like bad about everything, and when like the one thing I knew was how that book was going to end. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, that's what, yeah. And I was like, oh, in some ways, like, he is the Cancer because he's always going to outlive, but he's not, like, he didn't mean to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to find a way to love yourself, and that's all he's trying to do. And because I think when you lose someone too, like, part of the bitterness was I would feel so guilty if I felt happy. And it would make me like this sizzle in my brain. And I feel like that's where I wanted to give him the sizzle of like being unable to control his emotions and letting himself live in the entitlement and the bitterness, like all the bad things, like what would happen to someone but that was like as I wrote it. But as far as where it came from, it was definitely that like, oh, the gut punch of like waking up like, oh my God, he's really dead. And there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
You know, and like and I feel like, and it was like, there would be like nothing helped. And then Joe helped. And I was like, oh.
That's interesting that Joe, you decided to make that character a male versus a female because you were feeling these emotions.
Yes, I think that's what I learned from writing the script and then trying to write something about a girl. And it was like, this is too close to home. And I think also that when you miss someone who cared about you, who called you every day, who looked out for you, like part of that absolutely was like, oh, like in a simple way without, obviously like his behavior is terrible, but he does care about this woman. He does look after her. He looks too close, but I feel like on some sick level, I had to find a way to like have a sense of humor about my dealing with that voice not coming back and not calling anymore and not saying nice things. And so I'm like, remember, that can be a bad thing too. I feel like it was my way of kind of like elbowing myself to like get over yourself a little bit. Like it's, being loved has its downsides. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I feel like that was a very long, windy answer.
No. It's so interesting because I don't think I've ever asked you that question, and so I'm sitting here like really taking it all in, and
it's a question that always like because I feel like I always say something different. But I interviewed Parker Posey once, and I remember at the end of the interview, she was like, "By the way, if you ask me all these questions again tomorrow, I have all different answers," and that stayed with me. I was like, "Yeah, like that's a really good point that like goes back to that like curiosity. Like I'm going to be." Like figuring out the answer to that question forever, and I might never know. Yeah.
So you wrote the first book with the publisher, and then got it published.
Yep.
And then how did it come about with Greg Berlanti and Sarah Schachter and Sarah Gamble, who ended up,
Yeah, they got their hands on it. And Greg said all the great things. Like I feel like he got it. I'll never forget the first time I met him and Sarah, and the way he was holding the book. And I was like, okay, something about it in his hands. Like when you just felt like, he's like clinging to it and it felt good. And Sarah had that look on her face of like, they got it, they just got it.
Yeah.
And I felt good. And then it was like, they saw things the way I saw them as far as wanting to shoot in New York, like little like technical things that I really cared about. And then Lee, like he like had his copy with like, all these pages marked and knowing that it was going to be like a kind of, we're not supposed to say Woody Allen anymore, but like a Woody Allen horror movie. Like everyone had so much passion about it.
Yeah.
And that felt good. And
So then that was it. Then you were like, holy shit, my book is going to become, a show.
And I'm a big one for celebrate every part of the process because of living here and working in the industry. You know how hard it is to get things made. And that's where my friends would be like, wait, is it happening? I'm like, no, but it's optioned. This is a win. Like you have to look at everything as a win because it's so hard to get from one place to the next. And when it does, and when people love it,
And Greg and Sarah are so amazing. Just the small interactions that I've had with them, and the shows, just watching their career and them build their business.
Yes, meticulous.
They're not they're not joking around.
Yeah. I don't know how you can be that passionate and like obsessed with so many things at once, but that's what amazes me about them, that I feel like there's so much going on. I'm like, how? They run a tight ship. Like the way he would go from one writer's room to the other, and like I'm like, what is your brain like?
I know, right? That would be an interesting show, by the way.
I'm such an obsessive that I can't I don't know. I would like to shadow him. To me, that would be fascinating.
That would.
Yeah.
That would be really fun. If you do, can I come with you?
Yes. Yes.
Like we could be interns for like.
We'll just wear little hats and hide. Yeah.
Couple of months.
Yeah.
And so that's it. Like I'm now playing Candace in the first season. And I think I come in like episode 5 or 6 or something like that. It's been a minute, so my brain is now going down memory lane.
Yes. And I remember when they were doing the casting, and I was like, no, now he doesn't have to kill anyone. They're like, you wrote this book, like this is what happens. I'm like, it's so different killing characters before there's going to be another humans involved, like on a screen. I'm like, no, like let everyone live. Like,
yeah. Well, that didn't happen.
No,
that is not the show. That
Yes.
is not the show or the book that you wrote, by the way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now there's how many? We're on the 5th season.
Yes.
I say we like I'm like still.
Yeah. I mean, now I feel like it's its own entity, like, but yeah, season 5, which is so rare too. Because remember,
so
like
rare.
I love the journey the way it was Lifetime, and everyone there was so nice and so supportive and so great. But every week, like the numbers just,
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second because I think a lot of people are confused. I feel when people ask me, they're like, "Wait a second." So you tell the story because you probably know better than I do.
Well, it was originally at Showtime, and then that didn't work out.
I didn't know that.
Yep, that was like it was developed at Showtime.
I didn't.
And then
know that. Wow.
they took it to Lifetime, and I was just like, yeah, you guys like. You're the professionals, you know what you're doing. Like, I mean, it's not like it wasn't my decision anyway, but it was like nice of them to like, keep me in the loop. And
that's Hollywood for you.
Yeah.
We're going to pretend like your opinion matters,
Yes.
but at the end of the day, the head honchos are making the decision.
Yeah. And everyone at Lifetime was so supportive and so into it. And they had like banners when they were promoting. Like I was at the beach and the plane's going along with you and it's everywhere. And like, it was so exciting. Wow. And then those numbers just going down. But I was like, it's a beautiful show. This is the world. Again, like, probably going to get canceled. Like, that's the way it is.
But we had Netflix International.
Yes.
Okay.
And I remember being in Vegas with my mom, and it had gone on Netflix. And I remember when they told me that, I'm like, that's great. But, like, there's a million things. Like, you just don't know if people are going to discover something. Mm-hmm. And I remember that day that suddenly it was like, oh, God, people found it. And they can't stop watching it. And, wow. Like, I don't know about you, but... Like, I always knew it was great. And I was like, so many things I love get canceled or end. And I'm like, that's just marketing or like so many different factors. Yeah. So it was so exciting to see it have this second life.
I don't think it registered because I had done Ray Donovan, but nothing like you before. And when it blew up, I think I was like, oh, that's nice. And then I think someone called me. They're like, no, you don't understand. And I was like, yeah, that's nice. That's great. Good for my career. Great. What are we going to do next? Like, how are we going to, strategize for, moving forward? And they're like, no, you don't understand. This really just hit it. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I don't get numbers at all.
I can't either. I remember hearing the number on the phone, like, no, say something else. I'm like, I can't let that in my brain. I can't conceive of that many people. And just so, like, it's just so bizarre when you also to be so happy with the way something worked out. Like, I love that first season. I was like, oh, the world is crazy. What else is new that people aren't watching it? But I also think it was a really interesting moment in, like, history and the way things are consumed that, like, some things have that Sunday night. You want it once a week. You want to feast. You want to anticipate. You want to wonder. Some things are addictive. And that's what I thought, oh, when you can sit down and binge this and really get into his head and the story, like, it works so much. It does, like, that's what people need for this kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like,
the execution.
And that Lifetime, no one could find Lifetime and the app. Like, I'm like, I don't know. I just remember, I don't know about you, but when it was on, it was just such a heartbreaking thing where I'm like, they worked so hard, but like, I've got like my aunt on the phone, like, I can't work the app. I'm like, I don't know how to work the app. Like,
You're like, I can't. Yeah, I know. I could just turn my TV on and off. And half the time.
Door to door knocking on people's houses, like, turn on Lifetime and watch you. Like, it's really good.
So this was the second, then the second season came and that's when the pandemic hit? Right?
Because this is where I'm getting mixed up too. Like, I feel like, was that 2019 or, yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
Season 2 was shooting in LA in 2019.
Right.
Yes.
And then, the pandemic hit in March. So the show came out like in December, like late December, right?
Yeah.
So it takes a second, yeah.
And in that way that he's like a cancer, a pandemic, I thought, like, this is a nice, like, weirdly cathartic thing to watch. And I get it. Like, like
that
when there's no escape from
it was
something.
Like Tiger King.
Yes.
And then you.
I forgot Tiger King. Isn't it weird things like that? Like, that moment when everyone was watching that, I'm like, why this? Like, that's
I think I have a blanket that says Tiger King from one of the network or who, it was Netflix when they did they were sending all these boxes to people's homes to promote, and I was like, and I literally still have it. So every time I see it, I chuckle. I was like, what is this?
And I loved it because it was like people who wouldn't agree on anything in the world were watching Tiger King, like, could agree on that. Like, it's just a strange, kind of like the way Yellowstone is to me, like. things that
I
just
haven't
captivate
watched
people.
a whole season. I don't think I finished Yellowstone. I've seen a few episodes. It's fucking amazing. Now that's a show I would love to do.
It's so soothing to me. I just love those. I think when things move so fast, like in my brain, I like things that have those slow moments. Like I love when they're just like, out there in nature and there's just, here's the sun, like no story for a minute. We're just going to like watch them ride their horses. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, isn't it nice?
Like this, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like a view, yes.
What are you watching now? Not to like totally derail, but I'm just curious.
Oh no, I'm watching Sex and the City, rewatching because I'm writing something about 2001. So it's like a mood thing of like trying to, it's a weird, because I mean, obviously like I remember 2001, but it's just helpful to like look at it. And I just have that on a loop kind of
I love that.
Yeah, I'm a repetitive person. So I feel like, it's disturbing.
I'm the same way. I can listen to the same song 3 times and my kids are like, can we change the song now?
I was like, party once and played a song on repeat, and finally, like, people were giving me weird looks, and I'm like, "What? This is what? Like, I don't think that's
this is
weird.
not.
Like,
this is normal, right?
It's a party, yeah."
I love lately. I've been diving into like old hip. When I say old, like 2000, like hip hop.
Oh, nice!
It's so great. Mm-hmm. Like I think I literally posted the other day. TLC, Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls, and then some like Ashanti and like.
Oh, Ashanti, that's a good one. Yes.
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 I cannot believe how quickly, and it's fascinating to me to see even how our industry has changed and the way platforms work from even when you came out to
I know.
now.
Yeah, I feel like a big part of it was my fear, and like my dad, his big thing was don't put me on Facebook, and like hated social media, hated all of it. And I have always had that mixed love-hate with it. And that's when it was like a baby. Like it was like Facebook. And I don't know, like things when Facebook was like sweet and silly.
Yeah.
And like, and
it was like a scrapbook.
And to think that I was afraid of it back then when I wrote that book, and like, I'm like, oh my God, like this all gotten so much worse than I ever could have imagined, Oh
my gosh. So now you've written 4 books?
Yes.
Are you the 5th book?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm working on something now, and I was like, I'm never going to be done with him. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've just been working on other things, but like, like I get in, like, I needed a little space from him. It's my longest relationship with Joe. Yes, it's 10 years.
A very long relationship.
Sometimes I need to write other things, other crazy people. Yes.
So outside of the You enterprise, what have you been doing?
Been writing short stories, and I'm working on like a what do you call it? A pitch document for a show. And I'm hoping, And then I took a short story that I wrote, and I wrote that into a pilot. So just like, it's been fun to like go back to things that I wrote and kind of tinker with them and see what I want to put on screen, and wake up in the day like either I want to open Microsoft Word or Final Draft, and like getting to know those moods and
So you don't have like when you wake up I'm just curious how like your thought process is when you're you wake up, and if you're not doing a podcast or you're promoting something or pitching something, do you kind of just see where you're at, where your body's at, where your brain's at, and then say, okay, today I'm going to do more like writing? Or is it writing every day regardless? Is like you open the computer and
I go through periods of that where it feels good. It's almost like exercise. And then periods where I'm a little more like casual about it. Like right now I'm writing something where I wake up in the morning, I'm like, get me that computer, right? It's almost like irritating. Like
I can see you're excited about it.
Yes.
Do you wake up in the middle of the night?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, no, I was like, it's like willfully going to prison being a writer. Like, because you don't get to decide. Like, it's the thing that I feel like I'm always trying to learn that like, yep, I don't have it. I can sit here all day. And sometimes you do that. Like, you're like, I can't do anything but write this today. And I know for a fact that none of this is it.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter. It's like, this is all I can do right now. And it's the crazy making of like, here's, thousands of words and this is not it. But this is the way. It's like you're lost. And then for no reason at all, like get in the shower, go for a walk. Oh, yeah, that's it.
That's funny. I do my best thinking in the shower and driving.
Yep. And the minute I something get away from the computer, I know what to do with the computer. Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's okay. It's crazy how that happens. Okay, so what other projects do you have going on besides?
The most intimidating thing in the world that I just did recently, I was laughing with my friend who's in it. There's this anthology, and it's inspired by Stephen King's The Stand. I'm like, it's like, I don't know. I'm like, it's like, wait, I'm going to sit here and like try and write number one someone else's world, but his world. Wow. So we were like, my friend and I were just laughing of like, I put it off. I got an extension. And then one day it just like flew out of me. And it was one of those, like a good example of like the scratching at the nails on a chalkboard
Yeah.
for weeks of like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm never going to know what to do. I'm going to have to drop out of it. Instead of writing, I'm like writing the email of like, I can't, dear so-and-so, I will not be able to,
Yeah.
And then one day, like for no reason, I'm like, oh, and it just pops out. And then it's like, then you do the work.
It's
and
a
like,
short story.
Yes, for an anthology. So all these great writers. So I'm very excited about that. And
You wrote one that I loved. Virgin.
oh, Sweet Virginia. Yes, another happy story.
You know how we like those.
Yes.
That was an amazing thing, and that short story is. So wait, with a short story, what is like for people who don't know, and I obviously don't know, what is the difference? Like, is it a number count, page count?
Yeah, a short story can be anywhere from like 5 to like 40 pages, and then longer short stories, and then novellas. I just read a great novella that's like 130 pages.
Wait, you mean like a real novella?
I love that word. Yeah, like 130 pages. Whereas a book, I feel like it's going to be like 150 to onward. But I think for our attention spans too, short stories are the great. You get this like sense of accomplishment that you started something and you finished it. As a writer, as a reader, I'm really into that lately of like when it's so hard to like focus. And like I'll always love books, but I'm like, oh, when I read that novella, it was like, wow, that I read this in a day. It made my day, like truly.
Yeah, you felt accomplished.
And and that it makes it easy to also reread those things again. And they're usually, because they're condensed, like they're very, like there's an intensity that almost you couldn't keep it up for the length of a novel. And I love intense things too. So I'm like, just feeling that lately. Like this short story that I wrote just came out, The Bad Friend, and about this very toxic friendship with these women. And I don't know, it's been fun to, I've been working on that for 20 years.
Oh my
on and off,
gosh.
like playing with it. So it's like a child. And when like it was the Amazon invited me to do something, and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm gonna be out there, like I'm gonna like that's
show the world your baby, right?
Yeah, and it's not for everyone. I mean, it's a little sick story, but yeah.
I love you.
Yes, I love you. I love the smile you get when I say that. Yes,
because I totally get it. I'm so glad we got to reconnect.
Me too.
You mean so much to me.
Yeah.
I love hanging out with you.
Yes, this is we're gonna do this.
So when's the new season of you filming? Do you know?
I think it's filming right now. A friend actually just auditioned for it, which I'm I'm like, oh, I hope, like, I don't know, again, I'm like, it's not my decision, but that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think they're filming now, right? I feel like I saw something about that. And I don't know if it's like constant, do you know what I mean? Like if there are breaks or like,
And it's in LA.
In New York.
Oh, in New York.
Yes.
We're back in New York?
Yes.
I love that.
I know. I just feel like Joe is New York. Yeah. I like to take him places too, but
New York is is his home.
Yes. I like to take him back there. Yeah.
I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you so much. And to be continued.
Yes.
Yay Networks.